All right, so welcome to Model Monday, where for the next couple weeks, our project is this right here. These are some custom sunglasses that I milled on my Carvera Air, which is right behind me here. So over the next couple of classes, we are going to be modeling hinges and lenses and the actual glasses frames themselves. So without further ado, today's project. We're going to start with the hinges. The hinges are the tiniest hinges ever. So I had to use my microscope to photograph them so we could work on them for this project here. So I'll put the link for the images in the description below, along with the link where I got these on Amazon. I'm going to jump in and insert a canvas here. I'm inserting it from my computer. I'm going to find the image that I need. I'm going to open it, and I'm going to choose the plane that I'm going to put that image on. And then I'm just going to scale it up just so I can see it here. If I click on my navigation cube in the top right-hand corner, so I'm looking straight down at this thing, and zoom in a little bit. Zoom in, enhance. Zoom in, enhance. Okay, so now I'm going to open up my canvases folder that I got over here when I imported that canvas. I'm going to right-click on the image that was imported, and I'm going to choose the calibrate option. And now I'm going to break out my calipers and carefully measure. This is 6 millimeters. So I've got this little crosshair here, and if I hit the edge of that and the edge over here, and I say that's 6 millimeters, that'll scale that to the right size here. Now, normally I draw in freedom units. I'm actually going to change my document settings here to be millimeters. I just think that most of the measurements on this thing are going to be in millimeters because it is a standard unit of measurement that literally everybody else in the world uses, except for us Americans and Liberia and Myanmar, I think, which are the 3 freest countries in the world, obviously. So now I'm going to create a sketch right over the top of this. And I'm just going to grab my rectangle tool. Am I going to grab my... Yeah, I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. I'm going to make a 2-point rectangle. I'm just going to draw this half of the hinge here. And I know that if I hit my tab key, I bounce back and forth between these two measurements, right? So one is going to be 6 millimeters, and the other... let's go all the way out. Let's do that, because then I can measure wherever I put that hinge. It is gone now. That's how small these things are. Because now I can measure how wide it needs to be. If I can hold on to this thing and measure it at the same time, that would be a miracle. Alright. I gotta use tweezers to even hold this thing. Alright, so now I'm gonna call that. We're gonna call it 8 millimeters. So I'm gonna make this 8 millimeters. I'm going to hit enter, and I measured technically from like the other end of this thing. So this hinge, if you can tell, and I was surprised until I looked at it under the microscope, I didn't know this, it's actually angled. So there... Have I lost another hinge? Potentially lost another hinge. All right. So this thing is angled over here. So if I grab my line tool and I make a line that connects these things together, this is not actually a critical measurement of the angle of this line here. Really what we need for our sunglasses frame eventually is we need the placement of the holes and the size of this plate, because that's the only thing we're going to be machining here. So the other stuff is just kind of, nice to get as close as we possibly can. I'm going to grab my 3-point arc tool to kind of finish off this arc. And I'm going to turn off my canvas because it's kind of in the way right now. It's kind of hard to see where my lines are. So I'm just going to grab my horizontal vertical constraint up here, and I'm going to apply it to these 2 points. So they're, horizontal, vertical from each other. And then I'm going to grab my tangent constraint, and I'm going to apply it to this line right here. And then I'm going to add a point. Say create a point. I'm going to create that point right in the middle of this line here. And then I'm just going to add a coincident constraint between that point and my origin. Because I want to fully constrain things here. I like it when things can be fully constrained. Things are going to move predictably then. And then lastly, I'm going to grab my sketch dimension tool, and I'm going to just dimension this arc to be whatever I drew it at. Again, we were kind of messing with this canvas here. If I hit the escape key, then I can move that canvas back into place. Because again, the holes is really what we're looking for, the holes in this plate. The plate size I could have just measured and drew, right? But it would be very difficult to measure the tiny little holes in here on this hinge. If I just grab my center diameter tool here, I know because I stuck a 1 millimeter drill in here, and that these holes are exactly 1 millimeters. They fit 1 millimeter screws as well. So I'm just going to place a couple of 1 millimeter screw holes there. And then I'll turn off my canvas again because it's kind of in the way. It's kind of hard to see. I'm going to grab my horizontal vertical rule here, and I'm going to add that between the circles and my midpoint / origin over there. And then just to fully constrain things, I'm going to add a dimension here, and that's just going to be whatever it is. And I'm going to add a dimension here, and again, that's going to be whatever it is. And if I turn on my canvas, I think those holes are going to line up pretty good. All right, cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and say finish sketch. Actually, you know what? Should I do the other side? Maybe. Let's go with maybe. Let's try it. I'm going to just grab my mirror tool. And if I just mirror these items, and I mirror it over this line, that does not mirror nicely at all. Those hinges are not the same size. I'm going to draw the other side. So I'm just going to use my line tool here to kind of draw this other side. I'm going to grab my horizontal vertical rule and just make sure that, hey, that's straight horizontal and hey, that's straight vertical. I can grab my 3-point arc tool and I can draw this line over here. Maybe I'll take this line and I'll turn it into a construction line there just by clicking on it and hitting the X key on my keyboard. I can grab my circle tool again and draw my 1mm holes. I'm going to hide that so it's a little easier to see here what I'm doing. I'm going to add my horizontal vertical constraint between the circles and that midpoint over there so they're right in the middle. Let's turn on my canvas again. This photo is probably slightly crooked. I'm sure those holes are right in the middle of my of the shape here. I just need to kind of put them in place right to left. All right. We're making these out of wood. So, like, this hole placement is going to be fairly forgiving. The screws are, if they're 1/10 of a millimeter off, they'll work their way in, and we won't have an issue. So, I'm just going to add my sketch dimensions just to fully constrain things. I'm going to let them be whatever they are. So I've got my sketch dimension tool and I'm just placing the dimensions for however these things happen to lay out is going to be just fine. And now we have a fully dimensioned sketch here. So I'm going to go ahead and say finish sketch. I'm going to turn off the visibility on my canvas. I'm going to extrude out a couple of shapes here. So I'm going to extrude out this shape to whatever distance this needs to be. I believe it's 1 millimeter, but we're going to trust but verify. Yeah, 1 millimeter. I'm going to say okay. I'm going to extrude out the other one right away too. Create, extrude this guy, also 1 millimeter. We're not going to join these together. We're actually going to make this a new body. Over here in my operation. Now, let's go ahead and do some housekeeping here. I've got a sketch that I can name. This is my hinge shape. Missed an E there. And then this, I'm going to call this just side 1. And then here, this is going to be side 2. All right, so now let's bring in another canvas here. We're going to insert another canvas from my computer. This one right here. I'm going to put it right in the middle on the side here. And then I don't think I need to do any calibration here. This just happens to be a good size. So I'm going to say okay here. And now I can create a sketch right on that middle plane. I'm going to draw a couple of... It's interesting that this angle is on the other side. I don't think that's going to affect us at all. Yeah. I'm just going to draw I'm going to click Finish Sketch. Because we actually want to be drawing slightly at an angle here. I actually don't think this canvas is going to help us at all. is I want to draw my circles for the hinges. I want to draw them perpendicular to this axis right here. In fact, I wonder if it behooves us to do this as a revolve. That could be kind of an interesting way to tackle this. So what I'm saying here is if I choose to create my sketch right here on that surface, what I'm going to be making is a 2-point rectangle. And that 2-point rectangle is going to be really small. I'm going to make it 1 millimeter. It's actually more like 0.8 millimeters. That's actually 0.8 millimeters tall. And it's, well, it's hard to delete a measurement once you've typed it. So sometimes what I do here is I'll just like, all right, I'll place that measurement, even though it's wrong. I can click on it later and delete it, and then I can make it right by adding whatever constraint I need to add here. All right, and then the diameter of this hinge. Again, this is not really a critical measurement here, but I like to get things close. That's fun for me. It is 3.23. So I'm going to draw another line up here somewhere. Make sure it's got that horizontal vertical constraint on it. And then if I just dimension this line from here, and I make it my 3.23 millimeters, actually divide it by 2. And then, you know, for our purposes here, I'm just going to divide this in half. And I'm going to say finish sketch. And then what I got going on here, you can kind of, maybe you've guessed this already, if I click create and then revolve, I can revolve this half around here. And it didn't really join that together, but that's okay. And I can revolve this half. Revolve around there. This is going to be a new body. I'm going to say okay. Now what we can do for we've got our hinge drawn. We just need to like segment them, separate them into the sides that they're going to be on. Can't see what I'm writing there. Side 1 hinge, and this is going to be our side 2 hinge. I'm going to name, there's nothing on that sketch. That was a sketch that I made on accident there. But this is our hinge. All right, so what I want to do here is I'd like to show you the simulation of this moving around. So in order to do that, we need to have components. So I'm going to create my new components. I'm going to create them from bodies. And the bodies that I'm going to be using is going to be the side 1 and side 2. So what that'll do is it'll make 2 new components. One called side 1, one called side 2. It's going to move the bodies in there, and then I could just take this side 1 hinge and I can move it into the side 1 component. Take this side 2 hinge and move it into the side 2 component. This little anchor here that appears on the components, this is like a recent-ish Fusion 360 thing that it just started doing a few months ago, and it's super annoying. So, like, as soon as you see that anchor, just right-click on it and unground it from the parent. It's going to prevent things from moving around, and that is the opposite of what we want to do with these components. We want them to be able to move around. So why that's on by default is super annoying. Please fix Autodesk. Thank you. So now I'm going to assemble an as-built joint here. We are making not a rigid joint, but we are making a revolute joint between these two components, and it's going to spin on that there rotational point. I'm going to set a minimum and a maximum because we can. And now if I say preview limits, you can see there's our hinge moving. Maybe let's reframe this so we can see the full thing. Cool, there we go. And tell you what, let me look at this from the top here too, so you can see that our hinge actually folds at an angle there. And, you know, it didn't occur to me before, but this is actually a crucial function of the sunglass hinge because you want them to fold down crisscrossed like that. So that 7-degree line kind of just slopes the sunglasses down so they crisscross when they're folded there. All right, cool. That is our project for today. I'm going to go ahead and just say, okay. I'm going to save the... Did I just undo? I just clicked undo accidentally. Redo. All right, save. This is the hinge from class. I'm going to save it in my sunglasses project folder that I've got going on. And then next week, we're going to draw lenses. Down in the description below, you'll see a link to these hinges and to the images that I used that I took on my microscope. All right, we'll see you next week.